Yo, I'm Seth Hawkins. Welcome to the CedTalks Podcast. My guest today is a resident here in Calvert County, Maryland. I'm proud of her strength, her bravery, and her courage, and I'm glad to showcase her on the show today. Right now, here is Amanda Kirby. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Cedric, for having me.
This has been a long time coming. This has been 8 to 10 months in the making, and we are finally making this work, and I'm glad to have you on.
And I'm glad that you have decided to have me on. And yes, it has been a couple months now. It's been for, since December. So
yeah.
I'm glad we could make it happen.
And shout out to Mr. Antoine White. I'm sure he's going to be listening to this. But shout out to him for making all this happen and get done. I'm really glad that he was able to make this work and he was able to connect us with this.
Absolutely. It's all about connections that you know. So
yeah.
And God love Antoine.
Yeah. Right off the bat, this is something I always ask my people at the start of the show. How are you mentally? How is your mental health at the time of us doing this right now? How are you feeling?
Well, my mental health is great. I appreciate you asking because I think that you should ask that, to everybody. Check in on your friends, check in on your peers, coworkers, whatever. But I feel great. I'm out here trying to accomplish a lot of things. I have my 2 girls that, they're going through school. I have a little baby, so just enjoying time, family life, the summer, all that.
Yeah, it's something that I feel like we ask people throughout our days, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. Oh, great. You just keep it moving. But I wish that we could sometimes just stop more and be hey, how you doing? How are you really feeling? And just go in depth with how you're feeling. And just
engage in a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Just engage in a conversation because sometimes you just ask, hey, how you doing? And you kind of go on about your day, but maybe that person just wanted a little bit more interaction also.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that sometimes people see that and they just keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to make the time.
Correct.
To keep it more than just casual.
Yeah.
And just have a conversation and open it up and just see how they are. What are they doing in their life? And maybe, spend some time with them.
Yeah. At my summer job, we had a little chart in our classroom, and it was from inside out. So it had happy, sad, anger or disgust, and then anxious. And they were each categorized with different colors. So each day when the kids would walk in or throughout the day or the end of the day, we say, hey guys, how you feeling? Are you feeling happy? You feeling grumpy or angry? And some kids would say, well, I'm feeling a little blue, sad, or tired. I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling really good. We never had an instance where somebody was red, which was good. Anger is
red, angry.
Yeah, and anger. Anger is a normal emotion, but nobody was ever red. But that was really refreshing to be able to teach children that, because I never had that in school, where the teacher would stop in the middle of a lesson and say, hey guys, how you feeling? Or let's take a break for a little bit. Let's talk about how you guys are feeling right now.
Well, I think that's important, especially I never had that in school really. Nobody, a teacher asked me, hey, how are you feeling today? What happened throughout your day? And I think that's important, even as our teachers or our neighbors or even the people we work with, hey, ask how are you doing, because people need that. And just like with these children, like you said, that opens up a conversation for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see that they mark that they're sad, you can say, well, hey, why do you feel this way?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? And they may be battling something very personal, and sometimes I know for me, that opens up the conversation. Or I remember, when I was in, middle school, here in Calvert County, and my parents were going through a divorce, and, my friends, they really didn't know, and I was just upset, and I had a teacher, and then I remember, it wasn't common for the teachers to ask or anything like that, but she just knew. Mm-hmm. And she asked, and I remember just crying, and I told her, and she allowed, she spoke with me, but she also allowed me to have my space and do my work, outside of the classroom in the library. But I still remember that to this day, that impact that she gave to me and allowed me to have. And I feel like that was important, mm-hmm. Because she took the time. She took the time away from her classroom, told them, this is what you guys are going to do. I'm going to step out for a minute. And she took that time with myself.
Yeah.
But you never know what impact you're going to have on someone, and the time that you gave them, that could last them a lifetime. or they'll go back and they'll remember that, hey, this happened, and how that person treated them.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing that you at whether it's the daycare center or even being a school instructor, that you ask these children that, because sometimes they don't have anybody that asks them. And I mean, I've seen the new papers that they come home. My daughters have them over, from school, and they have to circle, or they talk, they're like worksheets, and and we've talked about them, her and I, when they come home, and or we do like little, what do they call them, like not segments, but we do these little interaction projects that they ask us to do.
Yeah. And
she has to write them out and stuff. But I think that opens her mind up too, also, to say, hey, this is, okay, this can be done this way, or talk it through. And I feel like that's, a lot of times, some kids, some adults, just people in general, they don't have things just to talk them through. Or anybody just saying, hey, how you doing? What happened in your, how was your day today? What'd you do? Or just say, hey, what'd you do this weekend? How was your weekend? I try to ask people, even at my job, my coworkers, my staff, I say, hey, how was your weekend? Or do you have big plans this weekend? Or what did you do last night? Or I know some, they like to, stop off at the store and they go, shopping for lotions and sprays and stuff. And I'm like, what'd you get last night? And, it just opens up a conversation.
Yeah.
And I find that to be great, because then the other person can give their opinion, and maybe they work it out, or they just talk. Sometimes talking is just talking. Yeah.
And I feel like it also helps children and students, even adults too. It offers solutions to what they can do to sort of solve the problem or figure out, what they're going through.
Exactly.
If I had a few children that felt, sad because they weren't making enough progress like they wanted to with the project we were doing. So I was like, okay, so what can we do together to, resolve this solution? Or what can I do as an educator to help you, feel better? And sometimes it was giving them space. Sometimes it was coaching them through it and sitting down and working with them until, we worked it out. But teaching them those skills to resolve it, will go a long way for them, even when they grow up.
Right, but it's also called collectively teamwork.
Yeah.
And, I feel like, yes, that's your job as you're being an educator, but you're also becoming a team with these children. And you're building these foundations with them, and they may come back and they'll say, oh, Mr. Cedric or Mr. Hopkins, I remember you when I was in first grade, and you watch them grow all the way through, there's the school system, and it's just like, you don't know what kind of impact you had on them, but it's teamwork, and you build that foundation with them. So you don't know whose life you may touch.
Right. Yeah. One of the things we talked about before we started recording was just the ability to observe and just sit down and listen to other people. How important is that? Because I feel like so many times we, as adults, or sometimes people in general, we look at things from our perspective and we don't really see things from other people's perspective. Or we just jump into certain situations without knowing a person, their personality. So, in your opinion, how important is it to be observant to other people's behavior?
So, I think it's very important. I also think it's human too, where, we have a human aspect to so many things. It is human that, hey, I've been in that situation too, where you just pose judgment, but I've had to have that lesson where, hey, you can't pose judgment. Or you may say things like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but I think for me too, because I've had it been brought to my attention before that, I tend not to speak, or I tend to just, seem like I'm shy or standoffish, but really that's my personality, where I'm kind of just like learning, or I'm observing, trying to fill out the room or fill out the person, or like, or maybe somebody has said something to me about that person, but I always like to gather my own perception first. But I think that, people, they should, make their own opinion. They should observe, and they should, they should make that observation and don't judge, don't pose judgment, but I think it's easy to do. It's human.
Mm-hmm.
We're all human. We've all done it. But I think one thing about being human or being a person in general, everything I feel like is a lesson. And we can learn from that lesson and say, and you may make that same mistake 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
But you learn from it and you're like, maybe I shouldn't have done it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Next time I'll do it this way. And, maybe that wasn't the great route, but let's do it, this way.
Yeah.
But it happens.
Yeah, that's my personality also, and we were talking about that earlier. And I thought it was like a terrible thing to have, because usually when I am in new situations, I'm very quiet, very just to myself, and it comes off as standoffish, and sometimes it's like, maybe I should be more like open to people. But it's like, you have to be careful with that.
You do.
And I thought that was like a terrible trait to have. But as I can sit back and reflect on certain events where, I was very quiet, I observed people, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't have, be hanging around those people, probably saved me from a lot of trouble too.
Well, that too. I mean, I get that. But I think, sometimes with that situation, again, it's a lesson.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do hang, with, even being, young, we hang out with certain groups, and we reflect back and say, man, I was saved from that, or saved from this. But there's nothing, wrong with that. I feel like there's nothing wrong with that. It's all about growing. It's all about, self-reflection. And I feel like not everybody self-reflects. I think that's a growing trait. Some people can't take their self out of a certain situation and reflect on it.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes some people come along with it later on.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think, too, your body language, I tend to sometimes look like I'm really tense.
Yeah.
And people read that. Some people are really good at reading other people. Sometimes I'm not. Like, like I said, I have to observe for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, okay, and I tend to be the one to be like to somebody else, well, hey, let's see it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you just need to, let's give them a chance.
Yeah.
Let's give them a chance. I didn't feel that way, and, sometimes I'm wrong, but we're human. So,
right.
And sometimes I'm right, or somebody may see something, or I have to say, my facial expression sometimes, that's what gets me in trouble. Because I'm like, everybody is like, oh my goodness, your face. I could so read your face. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
But because sometimes my facial expressions will speak way before.
Resting bee face.
Yeah, I got that bad, unfortunately. But, but then they're like, you know what, when I got to know you, hey man, you weren't even really you were not that bad. Like, I really thought and I'm like, they're like, you got Queen RBF. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Even my husband says the same thing. He was like, some people just don't know how to take you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to do better, but it's just me. And just like you're just you.
You can't change it.
You can't change it.
Right.
But once you start talking or having that conversation, you realize, hey, maybe my perception was a little off.
Yeah, yeah. You know the show Shark Tank, right?
A what?
Shark Tank.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the business show.
Yeah.
And one of the guys, Kevin O'Leary, he gave an interview, and he was like, when the people come in, they're making their pitches, I just sit there, and I watch them, and I observe them, and I try to see what their body language is, what's their presence, what their aura, because you got to have confidence. All of that is so important when you walk into the room. And if I see that they're a little nervous, they're standoffish, or they're not invested in it, I don't accept it. And of course, if their business isn't good, he's not going to take it. But he just observes their body language, and just him talking about your presence and your aura and the way you come off, your confidence level around people. It really made me examine myself and think, okay, well, how am I coming off when I walk into the room? Not that I want people to like me, but I want people to respect me, respect my presence, and what I'm contributing to this world.
Yes. I mean, I agree. I do agree with that. Sometimes for me, I say I'm super nervous, but it's like once I get into it, then I feel comfortable. But I think that's just, me hyping my own self up.
Yeah.
I'm hyping my own self up and I'm getting my own self worked up. But then once I start going, I'm straight.
That's it.
It just keeps going. It flows. But I understand where you're coming from when you say that, or where the show's coming from when he says that. But then there are some people that it takes them a minute to collectively come together. And like you said, I don't need everybody to like me. No, I don't think everybody needs everybody to like them. But everybody wants to feel respected and accepted.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if acceptance is right.
Or appreciated.
Yeah. I say it all the time. I don't need anybody to basically, not appreciate, but say, I don't need everybody to pat me on my back all the time. But at least every now and then be like, hey, that was okay, or that was great. Because I think people sometimes need that.
Yeah.
But I don't need you to size me up every day. You know what I mean? Because I know, hey, I did the right thing.
Yeah. And
I did it the right way.
In your opinion, how do you think people can have such a high, sense of self? How can people, believe in themselves more and, tune out that noise and just, really focus on themselves?
Sometimes I think that is a growth trait. Sometimes, because I've struggled with that. I think that sometimes you have to realize what's important to you, and you have to say, hey, this is important to me, and I need to focus on that. Hey, I need to focus more time here in home, or I need to focus more time like you going to school. Sometimes that comes together later, or hey, some people find that, writing it out, they make it come together better that way. I think you need to find your zen, to say, your peace, and for it to make it work for you. Not everything's going to work for everybody. For me, like I said, I had to say, this is important to me. These things I value in my life. I want to, when I was in my, I want to say late teenage years, I had to say, hey, I know what I need to do. I have somebody else that's looking up to me. And I have to, I'm going to be my better self.
Yeah.
And hey, I said it in my head, I'm going to prove some of these people wrong. And that's me being, 17, 18, because I said, I'm going to make something of myself, because there were some that maybe thought that I wouldn't. So to me, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm a young mom, I'm still in school, but I'm going to make it work. And I did. Am I satisfied now, being only 39? No. But it's human. Sometimes life pumps the brakes on you. But, hey, I'm going to still keep pushing, and I'm going to still keep going. I want to say, I remember, hey, back in school, in elementary school, you know how they hand out those rewards and stuff, or the certificates or whatever it was, and they do the assemblies, or they send them home with your report card, however they do it. Mine was always, not being on honor roll or anything like that, or, it was determination. And I felt like that stuck with me, because now that I'm older and I reflect, I'm like, I can see that. I'm always very determined to finish something, to do it, or to get it started, or hey, you might not be listening to me now, but I'm gonna get on your nerves and you're gonna listen to me. But I mean, or I think that to me, like, I run off of multitasking and I'm constantly have to be busy. That's just me. But I'm gonna prove it wrong.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna keep pushing. And that's what I did. And I think, and now that I look back, I'm like, I did that. Me becoming a young mom, I graduated high school. I worked full time. Eventually I didn't go to college right away because I had a son and I had, finishing graduating high school, working full time, went to night school just so I could graduate. I did that because now that I can see, because I was determined and I knew for me, I'm gonna do this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do this. And did I have people say wrong things along the way? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Did it hurt my feelings along the way? Absolutely. Did I cry about it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there were times I wanted to stop, but I kept going. And I didn't even go to college or think about taking any college classes until after I bought my house here in 2009. And that's when I still went. I walked them halls at CSM when I was pregnant with my daughter. My biggest fear was, oh my God, I'm going to have a baby in CSM. But I did it,
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's nothing about when you have to do it or what you have to do it. You just have to find what fits with you.
I like that. I respect that. Especially that resiliency to just push through and say, look, I don't care what's going on. I don't care if I got this going on or that going on. I'm going to do this and I'm going to get this done because
and life
this is the
happens.
goal. Yep.
Life happens. You build family. You build different relationships. Life still happens. Are there sometimes it gets halted? Absolutely. Do I have times now where I have to have conversations with others to snap me back out? Or like maybe I'm feeling all in my feelings that day? Absolutely. Again, why? Because we're human and it's natural. It's natural. But we know, you have to build that confidence with others, I feel like, and you have to have that confidence with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm human. Sometimes I feel like I don't have that confidence. But, and then I have to remember, what I do? I do. And for me, sometimes talking it through, a lot of times I say, talking it through, that works best for me.
Mm-hmm.
Or even writing it out. Because when you write your thoughts out, or just like, even if you just jot them down like bullet points, that works for me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I collectively just sit by myself, I zone out, I'm listening to music, or I even just, I'm on my phone just like reading the news or reading articles, and sometimes I'm like, hey, I just took a minute for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So then you put your day together.
Yeah. One of the things my mentors told me last month, he was giving me advice for the upcoming job I was doing, is that, look, you're going to make mistakes. That's going to be normal in your first year of teaching, but be a work in progress. And that was just something that I've been telling myself every day since that conversation, was that I am a work in progress. That key word is progress. I will always be a work in progress till my last day on this earth. I will be a work in progress until, the Lord says that's it. It's time. It's your time. But
right.
You just have to remember
read my mind, because I was going to say.
Yeah.
Your mentor, yes, to say your first year in teaching, however, should have said not just your first year of teaching, but your whole entire life going forward.
Yeah.
You're a work in progress. We all are a work in progress. We all are. You might leave here today and say, should I have, maybe I should have said this, or maybe I should have asked this, or, wow, she said she was, super nervous, and I was thinking this, but maybe I shouldn't have, or maybe I shouldn't have drove that fast on the road. But we are a work in progress every day. And until it's our time, we are to continue to be that work in progress. They always say don't judge, but again, we're human. People judge. Mm-hmm. People judge. But I just, and I still do it to this day sometimes on certain aspects. Have I really tried not to? Yeah. But again, I'm a work in progress. So are you.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep working and moving forward.
Yeah.
And progressing.
Yeah.
And you just have to take that and learn with it and make it a lesson every day.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, shifting gears from that, your kids, on the subject of personalities, when you look back on all three of your children, what are some of their personalities? Is a lot of it coincide with you and how you behave, or is a lot of it different?
I don't know. Some people older than myself, like my aunts, my uncles, even my mother, they may say comments of, oh, I remember you doing that as a child, this and that. I don't know. I will say that, I've said this before, now granted, some of them are still coming into their personalities. The two girls are still coming into their personalities. I would say they were different. Now, with Tyler, I feel like he was I will say all three of my children, they've always been very independent. Mm-hmm. I've seen that from the very beginning. Very independent, wanting to not have the assistance from, the adults. And I think that I hope going forward that builds on their character. With Tyler, I would say like he picked up on stuff really fast. He was, very, as far as like piecing things together. Brianna, for instance, it was like I always say when she started talking, or even before when she was, before talking, I always said it's like she's been here before, because she's like a little adult. She never talked, I felt like, this baby talk. It was just very vocal. Even still to this day, she's going into 6th grade. I have to try to tell her, I need you to think before you speak. Mm-hmm. Because she don't care who you are or where she's at a lot of times. She'll say it. Now, some people, they're okay with that, and some people, they're not. She tends sometimes to have a strong personality, but she also has a soft exterior. But she likes to, and I find this to be what I find the most to be with Brianna. Yes, my husband says it all the time. I love her strong personality because I want her to be a strong, independent woman. Mm-hmm. And I feel that. Because I feel like I'm independent in a lot of ways, and I feel like, hey, I can be a strong woman, and going, if something, if I, in certain situations, I can prevail from that situation. Brianna, she would just randomly go up to strangers and she gives them compliments, and I think sometimes I've seen it numerous times. We're in the store, the grocery store, we're just out anywhere. She's like, I really love your hair, I love your nail color, or I love your outfit, or I think you're so pretty, and the person that she's saying it to, you could see their face, they're a little of times they're like very standoffish, because they're like, what just happened? Mm-hmm. Because they're not expecting it. Then there's some of them, they're like, oh my gosh, you're so sweet, thank you, you know. And I love that about her. Because even though she can come off being very strong, and I think sometimes some people take her being bossy or mouthy, and that's really not her intention. I think still she's learning. Avery, she's my last one. Mm-hmm. And I say that with all confidence, my last one. I think with her, though, she has a strong personality. I knew from the beginning. She was independent. She wanted to do everything herself. And I think my husband has a strong personality too. But with Avery, though, I'm still trying to figure that out with her. Mm-hmm. I think she has a combo of like all type of personality. I think because she is the baby, I think Brianna kind of babies her a little bit, so we're still trying to figure it out, mm-hmm. you know. But I think she is very determined. I think she has the independence that is definitely shown. She's playful, you know. My husband says, "Oh my goodness, she's the meanest one out of them all," mm-hmm. you know. And I tell him, I said, I don't think she's mean. I think that she's just trying to find her place. But I think that I say this, that she's trying to show her emotion, but she's not there yet. Mm-hmm. But she's only 18 months. Yeah. You know, but you could tell. She wants something, she's going to get it. Mm-hmm. She's going to make herself known. That's why I do. She with her, she's the attention seeker. The others weren't really attention seeker. You know, they could be independent, playing. She can for a little bit. Oh, about maybe 10 minutes into it, she's over it. Mm-hmm. She throws the hands and she's ready to go. Mm-hmm. And she's ready to cause destruction. Wow. Yeah. She's like the little tornado. I say that. She's the tornado. Like, you're dealing, I feel like she's all over the place. Mm-hmm. But I will say that I look back, especially Avery and Brianna. I look back, they may do something, and you see something, and you're like, oh my God, it's like deja vu. Because you see a personality trait of what would have been Tyler's personality. Or like I look at Avery and I'm like, oh my goodness. You know, Brianna would do that. Or I can look and Brianna would make a face and I'm like, that's so your brother. You know? Mm-hmm. So it's just funny. They're all three collectively, between Avery and Tyler, they're what? They're 20 years apart.
Wow.
You know, I mean, yeah, because all three of them are 10 years apart. Mm-hmm. Give or take. But, I mean, so it's like you see a little bit of everything mm-hmm. in all three of them. But those are the qualities that are going to make them and build them.
Right.
Just like I'm pretty sure you have siblings and your parents could say the same thing about all of you all. Mm-hmm. Myself, I've heard that, oh my goodness, you were so, you were bossy or this and that. Well, I don't really think, maybe now that I'm bossy, some may differ. Mm-hmm. But, I think that's what builds upon yourself.
Yeah.
And you learn from that. Mm-hmm. That's like I told Brianna, you have to learn your approach. You have to learn your audience. You need to learn that some people may perceive you as being mean. When you're saying you're not, you just want to ask. Because I think kids, they automatically have an innocence. and they just want to ask.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't think some people perceive that as that way.
Yeah. I've had instances where I've had kids asking me questions. I'm just like, you ask so many questions. Why do you ask questions? Because I like to ask questions. And it's like, I was telling my mom one day, I was like, Mom, was I like this when I was that age? Yeah, you were. I was like, no, I wasn't. I was not like that. She was like, yeah, yes, you were. I was like, there's no way. But it's just fitting how their personalities develop and grow over time. But there's also that blending and combination of like the parents' personalities, grandparents, great-grandparents. Like my mom and I were talking about it the other day, and she was like, you favor your dad, and you have tendencies and behave like him a little bit. Like there are times where you just make a face or you get frustrated. I'm like, yep, that's your father. And there are times where you just behave and you're like your grandfather more. And it's like, wow, you're like him more.
You know, I say that, sometimes you may not have no connection with a person that you are genetically related to.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've seen this firsthand, and you will act or resemble that person to the T. And I'm like, you've never had a relationship with that person. You've never, but you genetically,
mm-hmm.
you build those same factors.
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie yet, but with Elvis and Austin Butler, he really, I think he dedicated like 2 or 3 years just studying his performance and studying his mannerisms and how he portrayed to the point where he's giving interviews, and it's like, oh my gosh, you're like Elvis, like you just completely.
I've heard really good reviews about that movie, but
yeah.
I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it, but it was just kind of telling where people were making comments of like he's like so similar to him. So I just looked at an interview and I'm like, wow. And you have a side by side of the two, and it's like, wow, he really dedicated years to studying this person to become just like him for this movie. And when you said like no genetic relation whatsoever, they had zero genetic relation whatsoever.
Yeah, they zeroed.
But he studied that man to a T to put on that type of performance.
To put on that performance. I mean, that's very interesting. Now I'm curious to see it, because it's just interesting to see how that will evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard really good reviews about the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've seen it firsthand where I'm like, they remind me of, like, I could be talking, I'm like, they remind me so much of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband will come in and say the same thing, and they're the same person. And I'm like, there's no way. But, I mean, even still, like, my husband says it all the time. I guess because I don't see it, because I like to see something differently. He says all the time that my daughter is just like me. And I'm like, no. I said, the difference is with her and I was like, there's incidents. I said, but maybe I don't remember, and I've grown to know, hey, I shouldn't say this right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll keep it in my back pocket. I'll say it later.
Yeah.
Her, she's off the cuff. With even, he used to say with Tyler and I, you guys are the same person. You're the same person. The difference is you're the adult, he's the child, and that's why you're clashing, because you're the same person. I feel like with the difference between myself and him, he'd do something off the cuff, off the impulse, like, I'm not doing that. I'd be scared. He was not. And if he was, he really didn't say anything that he was. It's like Avery. I will say this. She has no fear. She has no fear. So, it's scary. But it also reminds me of Tyler as well. That he had no fear. Where Brianna, she has no fear to say something out of her mouth. But she has fear to go into groups, or, sometimes she feels like it takes a minute for her to be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Where the other two, they really don't care.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've seen that with the little one to now that I think about it after us having this conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, him, that wasn't me to be impulsive, like, to that, or like to give something a try. I wasn't doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Could I say something about like our personality a little bit, the outgoingness to an extent? Maybe. I just feel like, could I talk to anybody? Yes, if I open the conversation. Him, he's just mingling and carrying on and more free spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like emotion wise, I think that, yeah, I can see where he's coming from in some emotional wise. I can reflect on that.
Mm-hmm.
The other two, yes and no, to an extent.
Yeah. With Tyler, do you have any funny stories that come to mind when you think of him sometimes?
Oh, Lord have mercy. You know, I want to say, even as a small child, I think he would always try to make everybody laugh, or he's doing something to make somebody laugh. As I watched him grow into middle school years, high school, he's just a goof. I mean, oh my goodness, he'd be in my kitchen dancing, and I mean, Lord have mercy, if he was here today when TikTok is going now, my man would probably be blowing TikTok up with the stupid crap he would do. I mean, with taking all the pictures on the phone, just him and the boys acting so goofy. I mean, I just think it was always him just being just goofy. Just goofy. Mm-hmm. Or maybe some of the things he would say, but I think it was just always about, make somebody laugh. Like, you're just too playful sometimes. Mm-hmm. I was like, take something serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. Whereas, like, with me, I mean, now I'm more playful now than I used to be, but I used to be, like, so serious. And then, like, my cousin, he looked at me and be like, loosen up sometimes. Like, you don't have to be serious all the time. But just from my interactions with him, we weren't the best of friends. But just based on my interaction with him, just always just playful. And that never meshed well with me at the time, because I was always just very dedicated, very serious. And here's this guy. He sat in front of me, 10th grade social studies. He leaned back like this to try to touch me, and I'm like, get your hands out of here.
Right.
And he's just leaning back like that, trying to touch me. There's a whole lesson going on, and he's just sitting there messing with me.
He don't care. But what I will say this, and was he innocent on all aspects? Hell no. Hell no. I do know that. I can say that and I've said this before, I've said this before, like, I knew he was not innocent by any means. He was, he was a kid. He was a teenager. I know what teenagers do, how they act. I mean, I'm not blind and I'm not naive. He could mess off in school, and I always found this to be very disturbing to me, in a sense, being his mother or his parent. Because my husband would tell you the same thing. It would drive me insane. I know you ain't up in there paying attention like you're supposed to be doing, or you're goofing off. But then it's like after we were on him about it numerous times, it's like he would focus and get it together. I ain't never seen somebody come back and bring all your grades up to A's and B's, and you're like, are you serious? Because he knew how to do it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you sitting in there effing off. You know what I mean? To be quite frank, about it all. But I knew. I wasn't blind to the fact, but I'm just like, Or he'd be like, I wasn't. I'm like, really? But so I get it. But yeah, he was such a goofball.
Yeah.
Very too playful sometimes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I mean, even here at home. But then, sometimes you're like, y'all are getting on me too much, Well, no, we wouldn't have to if not everything's a joke. But I think then he had a serious side, and people saw that serious side, also. I think personally, him being, goofy, or that was his way of interacting with other people. That was his way to try to be, I guess you would say now, versatile with everybody else. And hindsight 2020 now, I can reflect on that, and I can see that, and I can see where there were times he was serious about it, or where he had this serious personality, or like his his emotions and stuff like that. I think now I see more of it now than before. So, but I knew that always he could do it. I mean, even if he hounded somebody, hey, yeah, I need your notes for X, Y, and Z, or I need, I can't even tell. Stop hounding that person for their damn assignment, because you should have did it yourself the first time.
He did the same thing to me, and that memory came up, this morning where I was in the hallway walking with my friends, and he comes staggering over to me. Hey, son, can I see your math homework? I have math in like 2 periods from now. I was like, no? Okay.
Right.
I was like, what just happened?
Right. But again, I was not naive to say, oh no, not my son. Hell no. Because I knew. Number one. Number two, he's a teenager. It happens. But just take the lick and say, I didn't do it. But that wasn't him. So, lesson learned.
Yeah. I'll have kids who I work with, they'll ask me, they're like, Mr. Cedric, have you ever gotten in trouble? Have you ever gotten a referral? I was like, yeah, I got one before, and this story involves him. It was 6th grade, and the day just started. First period hasn't even started yet. Walking down the hall, and out of nowhere, somebody just smacks me in the back of the neck as hard as possible, and it was him. And it was him and his friends that are walking away. And I'm like, I'm going to get you back. He's like, yeah, right. I was like, I'm going to get you back. I look at my friend, and he's like, are you going to get him? I was like, yeah, I'm going to get him. Because he just embarrassed me in front of everybody. He smacked me in the neck as hard as possible. So we get to gym. This is the last period of the day, and it's a Friday. And we're in the gym locker room. He's changing. He has his shirt off. His back's turned from me. I'm like, all right, this is my moment. I'm going to get him. He's not watching. Nobody else is watching. Wham! Get him in the back. Everybody's like, oh. He turns around, sees that it's me, grabs me, pushes me up against the locker. Gym teacher was watching us the whole time because he has his office, and in the window, he can see what's going on. But I'm 11, 12. I'm naive to this. He saw all of it, what was going on. So he was like, hey, what's going on? So he pulls us in the office. We sort of give each other a look like, all right, you know what needs to be done, Try to lie out of this as much as possible. Yeah. So we told him that we were just goofing off and messing around. He was like, well, you shouldn't be touching people, Cedric, and Tyler, you shouldn't be pushing people against the locker, so keep your hands to yourself. And all this stuff. So the Monday comes around, first period, get called to the principal's office. Right there's a referral waiting for me, and ISS for a day. I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, why did that gym teacher have to snitch?
Right.
We didn't have to snitch like that.
Yeah, and I remember getting the phone call. And I remember exactly, even still to this day, what I was doing when I got the phone call. Because I was over, my husband worked nights at the time, and it's funny that you brought that up, too. Because I was over shopping over in St. Mary's. I was over at Kohl's and everything else, and I was like, what? I was like, well, this happened on Friday. Why didn't you call me on Friday? And honestly, I mean, but again, like I told Tyler, first and foremost, keep your hands to yourself. I don't care if you thought she was playing around or not, or whatever it was to be. So, But that's the thing, the impulse thing. Like, no, like, what was your purpose in doing that? And then, like you said, then I'm gonna get them back, But I think that's just like that's just the juvenile mentality. I feel like, but obviously it got worked out.
Yeah.
And I mean, the lessons, it is what it is, and you learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
But both of y'all ended up with a referral and a day in ISS. That's how we rolled on the start of 6th grade. So
yeah.
So I mean, I get it, but there's where that impulse thing comes in. Oh, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna, show off or whatever. Mm-hmm. No, think about it and think about what the reaction is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the teacher and me would have just pulled those boys aside and be like, hey, you're not supposed to be touching each other. Keep your hands to yourself.
Right.
I don't want to see you boys in trouble, so just don't do that again.
Oh, no. Yeah, I get it.
I didn't think it was that deep to get a referral in ISS, but that's just me.
Your soul was crushed with the referral in the ISS.
Yeah, it was crushed. It felt like prison in there.
Right, I get it.
And it felt like freedom finally getting out of there.
It was only a day.
Yeah. But in the lead up to his passing, that sophomore year, 10th grade year, did you see any signs that, his mental health was on the decline? Did you see anything in hindsight looking back?
So, I think this question presented itself when we did the documentary, to my husband and I. This year will be 6 years, or this just passed to be 6 years that he has been gone. And, I think looking back, absolutely. Before his passing, I did have him in counseling. Because I felt like if he wasn't going to talk to me, you're going to talk to somebody. Because there's obviously something going on. And I always try to have an open conversation, even before this even happened, before me even trying to say, I always felt like talking was important, being open with your children, and your family, your household is always important. And I'm pretty sure your parents can attest, parents, we don't know if it's right or wrong. We're learning. Nothing comes with a handbook. Just like with you, there's no handbook in building relationships or anything like that. I guess for us, there was, he had that, I want to say, like, it seemed like some behavioral issues were happening a lot more than what it was just being playful. I think it was more defiant here at home. And a part of me at the time felt like, okay, I went through this myself. This is just me being a teenager, I don't want to be told what to do, X, Y, and Z. And I'm not naive. I know what, these kids were out here doing, I mean, or when you come home, thinking about it as the years have gone by, just the mood swings, or to be irritable. It wasn't something that just lasts for a little while and brush it off. And then sometimes he would come and, he would talk. But then, as he was going to the counseling and stuff like that, I felt like it started to change a little bit. And we all felt that way. I know there's some back and forth, and it even came up in the documentary, and I said, wait a minute. Some people have said, oh, he wasn't in school that day, or he was in school that day. He was in school that day. you know, he was, so that's where I'm like, you know, in one of my segments, I'm like, you know, the day started out great because it did. And we had been on a high note, I felt like, where, like my husband said, we were coming around really good. You know, it was, you know, he was coming in when he was supposed to. He was, you know, he seemed like his old self again. You know what I mean? And that day, you know, I didn't have to argue with him to get up to go to school or like say, hey, you're running behind or anything like that. I still keep the same schedule as I did from 6 years ago. I get up at 5 in the morning every day. He came down. He, you know, obviously you remember from getting up and catching the bus early in the morning or however you got to school, you know, the bus would be here at, what, 6:30, 6:25, something like that. He was up one time. I didn't have to go get him. He came down to my bed and laid in my bed and we had a conversation. And I think that you know, that day, first off and foremost, always runs through my mind because I find myself to be, you know, a critiquer, and I try to dissect everything. And some things I've just learned, you just can't dissect it and you can't put it together. I don't know what happened that day, but you know, I mean, he got up and he was fine. He got up, he went and got on the school bus, got himself together, and I remember exactly what he had on, and he got on the bus and went to school. Every day, even still to this day, 6 years later, I go past Huntington High School about 7:15. I think on that day I was going through there about 7:25. So the bell had just started. You know, you were just freshly there. I think why people think he wasn't there was because I personally had spoken with a head staff member there, and I was trying to, from the downfall of the behavioral issues and stuff like that, I had agreed for him to be in basically ISS to catch up on his work. He wasn't in there because he was in trouble or anything like that. I said, you know, be in there, turn this work in, focus. We're almost to the end of the school year. It was May. And which in return, you know, he did. But he's calling. Calling. I need you to come get me. For what? I don't feel good. You just got there. And I'm picking you up early. Because he had a counseling session that day. You know, I got up to Pondswood Road after I hung up with him. I turned around and first off, I got up to Pondswood and I was like, you know, I would never. Because I'm the type of parent, first off, I ain't coming to get you. Unless you're really sick, you know, that's just always been my thing. I've always instilled in my kids, yes, if you needed a mental break, let me know. I don't mind keeping you home. But, you know, school's important. You know, so, and he knew that. My girls knew that. Well, Brianna does. You know, so I got just past Pondswood Road and I made a U-turn and I went back to Huntington High School and I signed him out. And that was totally unordinary for myself. I would have never done that. And I question myself every day because I knew nothing was wrong with him, you know. And then, you know, we got all the way down here and, you know, I'm like, what's your deal, you know? And of course there's some, you know, back and forth, and I'm not going to get into that, you know. But I get him home and I'm like, look, just relax, stay in the house, chill, I'll be back. I got to go back to work. I'll be back here because I'm not really that late for work right now. I can get to work and just be like 15 minutes late. You know, and I remember, you know, he comes outside. Take me back to the school. I said, what? I'm not taking you back to the school, Tyler. I said, they're going to think I'm crazy. You just said you weren't feeling well. I just signed you out with Miss Shields as being sick. No, just go in there, watch TV, relax. Don't, I'll be back. And I remember him sitting on my front porch on my bench, and I pulled all the way back past my mailbox, and his backpack was outside, and I just, I watched him, all the way until I left. And he was just still sitting there. So, I think that's where the discrepancy came from. Like, he wasn't in school, he was in school, whatever. But, those are those thoughts that stay with you. So, hey, I might have got off subject there.
No, not at all. Because I was going to ask, like, May 12th, what happened that day? And you told the story, so I just let you tell it.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
But, and I knew, to continue off of that. And I know a lot of this was, but I know you asked, did we notice anything before? And yes, I told you that, that was asked in the documentary, towards one of the last, scenes towards the end. And, I think at the time, and I think every parent will say they've gone through something with their teenager, and we thought we weren't dealing with anything other than any other parent dealing with a teenager. And that's honest. I thought I was doing the right thing by giving, I was taking him to counseling and this and that, and even still, those people that gave those services, they even said it themselves. They would have never thought in a million years that would have been the outcome we were looking at. So I think even being a professional, they didn't see that coming. So, again, I'm only human, so yes, that's just my personality to dissect everything when certain situations happen. And, they say when you experience a loss of a suicide, you always search for the why. And you're never always going to find the why. And I know that. But it's only natural that you question why all the time. But I piece together everything. And I'm just like, thinking back, when you learn maybe what statistics say, or maybe what has been learned over time, maybe what are some behavioral interactions and stuff like that, I could say, yeah, we possibly saw some of those things, and maybe I should have had that conversation like, hey, do you feel this way? And I didn't, because I didn't think that we were on that type of, I didn't think that that's where that conversation needed to go. But looking ahead after we've experienced this, am I comfortable to ask that, to have these conversations now with my daughter? Absolutely. And I've told her, and just like I've told your peers, because you were in the same graduating class as Tyler, I don't think that anybody should take it as a joke. If somebody says something or you feel uneasy about it, and they may say they're joking, who cares? Say something to an adult, say something to someone to report it, because guess what? If it was a joke or they really don't feel that way, okay, but lesson is they need to know that you don't joke like that, because life is precious. If they are joking, I say if they are not joking, sorry, and they do feel that way, you may have just saved that person. But I think sometimes, so our lesson from May 12th, 2016 is that, you know, supposedly there was some talk, you know, in the hallway before I came and picked him up. And if it would have been said to the staff, then maybe, you know, and I don't know because I really wasn't there. So you hear all types of stories. You just try to piece together what is what. But bottom line is, lesson learned, that if somebody did hear something or felt uneasy about something, they could have said something. And maybe we would have not experienced May 12, 2016. Maybe, you know, yes, maybe his friends wouldn't have experienced May 12, 2016. I know that May 12, 2016 was experienced by all. It was a very somber afternoon for everybody, even if you weren't friends with Tyler. I think maybe that was something that was experienced by all, because even if you weren't friends with him, you had empathy, sympathy, confusion, because you knew of this young man. But I think that if it was brought to somebody's attention, then it would have never happened. Mm-hmm. So I think the lesson that we learn from this, if you feel a certain type of way, you say something. And I've said that to my daughter. And she had an incident, you know, maybe about a year ago. And she said something. And the administrator called me. And I told him. First and foremost, let me tell you that I have instructed my daughter that, you know, she knows. And this is why she knows. And he totally understood. And he said, no, and I agree that it is something that needs to be spoken about. It needs to be brought awareness to, and I think that our children should know too. Because a lot of times I do think that some people just say things and because of the certain situation that they're in. And I say that like to give an example, because I don't want somebody to take that out of context, that you could be overwhelmed with something and just say, I just want it to all be gone today. Or I want to, you know, I'm going to kill myself. Well, how do you really feel? Are you saying that because you're overwhelmed today? Or just don't say that because that's to be taken seriously. So I think, you know, we have to learn the verbiage. You know, at this point, I don't care if, you know, and I told my daughter, I don't care if they're upset or they're mad at you at the end, because eventually, you know, they need to understand you don't, or they'll appreciate it later.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story. It takes a lot of courage to share something like that with a community of people, especially doing a podcast like this. So I commend you for sharing your story with me like that.
Well, I thank you. I feel like that. I think it needs to be talked about. I think it should, you know, I think I felt, for me personally, I think that, yes, there were incidences before Tyler. We've never really heard much. There's been incidences after. Whether it's youth, adults, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I always had this sense, even before Tyler, that we really don't talk about it much. I think we've gotten a little better after the fact and after more have happened. I think going through the pandemic, we have had there has been shown that there's a lot of people that struggle mentally, collectively. So has that come to light more? Yes. Has it been impacted on our children? Yes, but on our adults too. And if you're in certain employment spaces, it's put a lot of stress on people. But I think that it should be talked about more than what it is. Have we come a little further? Yes, but we need to continue to go further.
Yeah. And I remember that day, May 12, 2016. It was just a normal, ordinary day for me, just a normal, average school day on a Thursday. And it was after lunch. I go up the steps and I'm going to math class. And one of his friends gave his perspective on it, on the documentary. And it gave me a bit of context on what happened, because this is what I observed. I see him crying, and the wrestling coach and math teacher is just hugging him. He's crying, and his door is shut and the lights are off. And I was just like, what's going on? And that was instantly when the energy just changed in the hallway for me. I go to my math class. A few of the kids were asking, hey, what's going on? Why is so-and-so crying? And the math teacher knew, but she didn't say anything. She said, it's okay, don't worry, you'll find out as the day goes on. And she carried on with the class as if nothing was going on. So I give kudos to her for putting on that poker face and going on, because I know inside she was devastated.
And I know who you're speaking of.
So kudos to her. But class ends, I come out of the hallway, there's just this tension. And I can't pinpoint what's going on, because I didn't check my phone. I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
So I go to my science class, and my other friend, he's crying. And he's another jokester, another playful person. He's in the corner crying, and I'm just like, what's going on? And I look at my friend, I'm like, what's going on? And she was like, you don't know? I was like, no. And then she was like, Tyler's dead. I was like, Tyler who? Because there were so many Tylers. And when she said Tyler Bland, I was like, no, And I go on Twitter, and one of the wrestlers had posted something, and I was just in shock. I was just in shock. I couldn't cry. I didn't cry till I got home, but I was just in shock. And the day goes on. By then we had one more period left, and the day was over with, but I was just in shock. And as I look back and reflect on it, everybody had a different emotion of grief, from shock to sadness, anger, denial. My Spanish teacher, I would have done something different, but she was just like, look, I know you guys are upset, but we got a quiz tomorrow, so we're still going to review. And I was just like, how, we can't focus on this, but she kept going as just business as usual. But I went home, I was just in shock. I cried to my mom and my dad about it, but yeah, it was just in shock. But if there's one lesson I can take away from that day, is that it really brought the community together, and there was just a really shift in focus in mental health. Family who didn't really talk about that stuff were checking on me for about a month or two, just asking me how I was doing, how I was okay. And those conversations weren't happening within my family, but it started with that. But it just...
No, and I can see your perspective on that, because everybody's going to have a different day in that day. The vibe definitely changed. I remember I left work, and just because I could see things, transpiring, and, and just because any message that was sent to him came to my iPad. And so I could see the conversation he was having. So my husband calls, and another parent had contacted him that, this was going on, and I said, I'm leaving. And instantly I'm coming from Upper Marlboro back to Prince Frederick, and I could just, when you're a parent, or when you're really close with someone, you instantly have a connection that you feel that is, something's off. Something's off, something's lost. And I left. I remember, getting on Dares Beach Road. They were doing construction. I was getting ready to blow through that construction site, because I knew something was wrong. I felt it in my soul driving here, but I didn't really feel it in my soul until I was on Deer's Beach Road. And I knew exactly something was wrong. And when I pulled in my driveway and I saw the faces of his two friends, number one, that were here first, along with my aunt, I just read the room. I just read what I saw, and not read what I saw, but I read their body language, their faces, and I knew something was up, and I knew instantly where I needed to go. And, I'm okay to talk about it. Like I told you earlier, because I see the way that you're looking at me, I feel that, if you're totally open about the whole situation and the whole story, if you share somebody's story, whether they even have, how maybe they dealt with some, addiction or criminal activity, or they had hard struggles. If somebody tells you their story, sometimes it can help you. And sometimes you just have to be raw with it. And open. And I went and I sat with my son. And I screamed, I cussed, everything above. Total shock, grief, instant, all these emotions. What the hell? WTF. That's how I felt. Because I knew it hadn't been that long. So, and not to get too much in, and then instantly, it's just, the community coming together. And I very so much appreciate everybody. I will never forget the outpouring of love, thoughts, for me, for my family, anything that anybody did. I remember everything. So just to watch the kids show up and to see their faces and to be shocked, or for them to ask me, is it true? I will remember forever, especially his close friends. Those visions are forever embedded in my memory. Because some of these boys I've known since elementary school. I've watched them grow up. Some of these boys, didn't get real close until middle school, high school. But they were close. They had a real close knit. And I think even going forward after Tyler's death, I've watched them. I've appreciated them because they still have a real close knit. They have a bond that can't be broken. They may beef back and forth and carry on and whatever. It happens. But they have a bond and it can't be broken. And here this young man is gone. And they still have a bond with him. They have a bond with us. And I'm going to cry saying that, because I'm appreciative of them still being in their 20s. And your friend's been gone for 6 years and you still include us, or you still come by. And I think I cry out of gratitude because it's very much appreciated. Because it's like I'm not missing the moments. I'm missing the moments with my son, but I'm not missing it because I'm living it through them. And that's very thoughtful on their part.
You're very strong. You're a very strong woman.
It's very thoughtful on their part. Because, yes, they're young, but they have a lot of heart. And I've watched some of them through their struggles. And I love each and every one of them differently. So, you know, I love all of them just like, you know, my own. You know, May 12th, 2016, I think everybody probably thought I lost my mind, maybe, but I didn't feel that way. You know, we had a candlelight vigil was conducted out here in front of my house, even parked all up and down Dares Beach Road, because we don't live in the neighborhood. There's a hill adjacent across the street from us. I mean, people were filled. I mean, I haven't had that many people in my yard unless I had a big blowout summer cookout. And there was more than that. A candlelight vigil. And I spoke during that candlelight vigil. You know, and I remember saying that, and I called each friend up. And I said, just don't think about us. Think about them too. Because even though we have lost our son, they have lost a friend. And, you know, and even though I lost my son, I gained so many too along the way because of him.
Yeah, and that was my, you know, concern also was his friends too. Because I had a lot of classes with one of his friends, and I think he was at school that following week. I wasn't sure, but just, you know, finishing up that school year with that, you know, his friends are strong. You know, I started my grieving journey at 20 when I lost my dad, but they started theirs at 16, 17, and I couldn't imagine me as a teenager going through, you know, something like that, losing a best friend like that, like a brother almost. So I tip my hat off to them if they're listening to this. They are some strong people.
Yeah, and I mean, and for them to be that young, even you shouldn't have to endure something that being so young. But some of them have lost other friends. And I feel like they've gone through a lot in their short time. You know, they lost somebody they looked up to, their wrestling football coach, and that was another hit to them. You know, and we're talking about these same group of kids, and I felt like they've gone through so much. You know, losing Tyler, and some of them lost another friend that, you know, they had to experience. Then they lose, you know, their coach, you know, and I'm just like, and you're correct, to see their strength it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Since his passing, how would you say your perspective on mental health has evolved throughout the years?
Do I think it could be better? Absolutely, because I think we're all a work in progress.
Yeah. We go back to that. Be a work in progress.
We go back to that.
Yeah.
It comes full circle. I think though here, I think some areas do better than others. I think in Calvert County, I think it needs to be spoken about more. I will continue to say that. I think it needs to be, you know, spoken about in our households, our community, our families. You know, we talk about so many others, and we try to teach our children so many lessons that I think it needs to really be intertwined with that too. Mm-hmm. I think we need to teach our children how to I think we need to teach our children how to be calm